This is Shalom, your host, bringing you Gravity, a series dedicated to the discussion of science and how it interlinks with biblical perspectives. Today's episode, we are going to critique the origin of life from the evolutionary standpoint. Evolution theory states that life originally arose from non-living chemicals through the interaction of matter and energy. They claim that under proper conditions, life can arise spontaneously from non-living molecules. I propose that natural processes are not sufficient to explain the origin of life and the complexity of the cell. In order to make my points, I am going to develop 4 lines of arguments. 1. Synthetic biology does not prove evolution, but rather critical role of a creator. 2. The presence of irreducibly complex systems refute the process of evolution. 3. Evolution mechanisms cannot account for the origin of information on DNA. 4. Proteins are too complex to have formed by chance. Firstly, work in synthetic biology indicate a critical role of a creator. The goal of synthetic biology is to create artificial, non-natural life forms and modify or manipulate them in such a way that they do not do things that they would naturally do. The aim is to create improved biological functions to fight current and future challenges. Many people believe that this is the case of biological evolution. They argue that if we can go in the lab and manipulate or create life, it makes God look obsolete or unnecessary, and hence validate chemical evolution. The irony of the matter is, as scientists work to create artificial life in the lab, they use sophisticated technology in designing the protocol, assemble the apparatus, supply the materials for the experiment, adjust the initial conditions, and regulate them throughout the study. Monitor the course of the chemical and physical changes, usually by withdrawing material from the apparatus. This work requires a team of quantum and computation chemists, protein engineers, biochemists, and molecular biologists, utilizing sophisticated lab equipment to carry out their work. This implies that simple chemicals do not self-organize by chance into life, but rather are showing that life cannot come from non-life unless an intelligent being is involved. Secondly, the presence of irreducibly complex biochemical systems. This system is one that requires several closely matched parts in order to function, and the removal of one of these components effectively causes the system to cease functioning. Living things have fantastically intricate features that could not have functioned if they were any less complex or sophisticated. The only prudent conclusion is that the feature could not have come into existence without the entire feature being created all at one time. Just as the aeroplane, made up of over 6 million parts, can fly, but taking one of these parts aside, not by one part by itself flies, but when it is assembled as a complete machine, it flies. The analogy of the airplane helps us understand the basic mechanisms of biochemistry that enable the organism to function. When you look at the cell, for example, you will notice that it is like a literal factory containing an elaborate network of interlocking assembly lines with sensors, gates, pumps, and identification makers, packed with power plants, automated workshops, and recycling units. That's why it's been said that even the most advanced Modern factory, with all of its computers and robots, all coordinated on a precisely timed schedule, is less complex than the inner workings of a single cell. Now, the human being has trillions of cells. Charles Darwin himself provided a criterion by which his theory of evolution could be falsified. He said, I quote, "If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, and slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down." Unquote. It sure has, Sir Darwin, as we can see that there is no way for natural selection to work to enable Darwinian evolution to randomly produce complex and biological systems. Every living thing, therefore, had to be completely created by God at one time, as the Holy Bible proclaims. Thirdly, there is no known evolutionary mechanism that can account for the origin of information on DNA. The structure of DNA is very complex, having an elegant system for holding and copying digital information within the cells. It stores instructions necessary to assemble and sequence the amino acids in proteins. This chemical code has been called the language of life. It is the most densely packed, elaborated, detailed assembly of information in the known universe. The amount of information that you could fit into a DNA the size of a pinhead would be 500 times greater from the distance of the Earth to the Moon, each with a different yet specific content. It is an absolute impossibility for the information content of a human being to come into being by random chance of mutation and natural selection. Imagine you have a bunch of magnetic letters. You stick them into a metallic surface, such as a refrigerator. There is a force of attraction that explains why the letters stick on the refrigerator. But that force of attraction does not determine the arrangement of the letters that might spell out a message. Information always comes from an intelligent agent, arranging the magnetic letters. In the same way, there are no forces of attraction that determine the arrangement of information bearing bases in the DNA molecule. What that means is that even if you had all the necessary chemical constituencies of DNA sitting in a very favorable chemical circumstance, some kind of prebiotic soup, you still would need to have some information necessary to build up the DNA molecule. With the evolution theory, science are focusing on the chemicals rather than the organization of the chemicals. Life is not in the chemicals, but rather in the organization of the chemicals, information and functions. Lastly, proteins are too complex to have formed by chance. Proteins are the basic building block for every cell structure and are an essential component of the chemical reactions that make life possible. Proteins are made up of long strings of amino acids. If one of these amino acids was out of place or missing, the protein would completely be useless. The simplest protein molecule consists of 50 amino acids, whereas more complex ones contain thousands. What is the probability of an average-sized protein molecule composed of 300 amino acids containing 20 different types of amino acids being formed by a random combination? These 300 amino acids can be arranged in 20 to the power of 300 or 10 to the power of 390 different ways. This is a tremendous, huge number consisting of 1 followed by 390 zeros. But that's not all. To produce a protein, all the amino acids have to be left-handed. The probability of an amino acid being left-handed is 1/2. Therefore, for all 300 amino acids to be left-handed, the probability is 2 to the power of 300, which is equal to 10 to the power of 90. In addition, for all the amino acids to form a chain, they must be united together in a chemical bond called a peptide bond. The probability of 2 amino acids combining together in a peptide bond is about 50%. Therefore, the chance of 300 amino acids combining together in a peptide bond is 2 to the power of 300 or 10 to the power of 90. The total probability of the 300 amino acids of 20 different randomly combining together to form the average size protein is obtained by multiplying all the probabilities, making 10 to the power of 570. This is worse than a blind man picking out one single grain of sand from the countless grains of sand in the entire world. As we have seen, the structure and functions of living systems distinguishes it from materials that are produced by natural processes. That life cannot come from non-life. Despite scientific evidence to the contrary, there are those who continue to believe in evolution and therefore forced to accept and defend spontaneous generation, that is, life coming from non-life. The reason for this dogmatic adherence is eloquently pointed out by George Wald. I quote, "When it comes to the origin of life, there are only 2 possibilities, creation or spontaneous generation. There is no third way. Spontaneous generation was disproved 100 years ago, but this leads us to only one other conclusion, that of a supernatural creation. We cannot accept that on philosophical grounds. Therefore, we choose to believe the impossible." Unquote. According to Wald, it's not about discovering the truth through the finding of facts, not a matter of evidence, nor a matter of science. It's a matter of philosophy. Many people do not like the alternative, that all life on earth was created by God. So as Wald said, they are willing to believe the impossible. Thank you for watching this video. We hope that you have learned something. Please, could you like this video and follow us on Facebook? Our page is called Gravity. It's a sure thing.